name's Justine Hyde and I'm the Director of Experience here at the Library, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here tonight to the Foundry658 information session. Before we get started and before I introduce our speakers, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathering tonight, the people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's great to have you all here tonight. We're really excited to be working on Foundry658 between the Library and ACMI on behalf of Creative Victoria and the State Government. Tonight we've got a couple of guest speakers, as well as Anna Berkey, who works here at the Library, and Helen Simonson, who works at ACMI. So it'll be a chance to hear a little bit about the program, but also for you to ask any questions you've got as well. So I might kick off by introducing Anna Berkey and hand over to her.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Justine. And hello to everyone in the room, but also hello to anyone watching on the live stream as well. So you can tweet in your questions, you can send them in on the YouTube channel if you're watching, and if you're in the room, you'll get to ask questions in person. So queue them up and think about what questions you have to ask. So thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. I'm Anna Berkey.
And I'm Helen Simonson.
And we thought we'd give you a little bit of background about the Foundry program, why it has come into being, and what it is that we're looking for in this kind of program. So, as Justine said, this is a program that ACMI and the Library have put together on behalf of Creative Victoria. And what we're looking at is ways and opportunities that creative industries, those who are practitioners out there in the world doing really great work, those who already have successful and growing creative businesses, those who have ideas and really a great idea ready to launch, or even just an inkling of an idea that is but really dedicated to making that happen. Then those are the kinds of programs that we feel that put that together with some business development training, and particularly some of the methodology from the startup and the business landscape. And we think that those two things we could see some really interesting business opportunities come from that. And it gives a chance for the creative industries to play in a different space and not necessarily need grant money. Arts public funding is really important, but there can be some business ideas out there that might, with the right help, be really commercially viable as well.
I think that's a good way of putting it. It is a chance in this new landscape to consider how you might think about business scaling. I know we've been working in this idea of lean methodology and how it works for creative industries and practitioners. And we're in our sort of second boot camp and accelerator at ACMI. And so joining with the Library is really important with us, because we want to keep working with this methodology and really supporting businesses in a different way. And there are things about the lean methodology that just make sense for creative practitioners. It is about being nimble. It is about moving quickly and iterating and thinking differently. And they're all things that creative industries and creative practitioners have in spades. But there are differences to the methodology, and it's quite a logical methodology, and that is that you don't build it and people come. You really think about the market fit and whether that business is going to make sense, and you do that work up front. And it's mainly devised to save people from a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money to invest in something that in the end doesn't quite work in market. And if you are doing that, what's called a validation process, you are getting more information to improve whatever that idea or product's going to be anyway. So it's sort of a win-win situation.
So a little bit about what Foundry actually is. So the Foundry658 program will have 3 specific components to it. There will be 2 iterations of the bootcamp program, and then from that bootcamp we will draw 10 teams to go forward to an accelerator program. So the boot camps will be 10 days worth of training across a 3-week period. They will happen in November. We will take 1 cohort. It's a group learning process, so there'll be 25 in each group, 50 in total, through that boot camp, 1 in November, 1 in February 2019. And then we will look at the 10 teams going through the accelerator will happen from the end of March through to June 2019. So 10 days worth of training across a 3-week period for the boot camp, and then 3 months worth of training for the boot camp process, for the accelerator process itself. So Helen, maybe you can tell us a bit more about what to expect if you're going forward for a boot camp.
So a boot camp is often used for two things. One is it's just to give people a sense of how the methodology works if you're using and exploring that idea of design thinking and lean methodology. So it's an opportunity for people to get that experience and see how that fits. And it's also an opportunity to see who's ready to move into the accelerator. So that boot camp kind of takes you through processes to work out whether you're ready from your perspective and whether you're ready to kind of do the work that's needed in an accelerator. The idea of an accelerator is if we put 12 weeks of intensive business coaching and support to a business, we're ready to support them really building and scaling their idea. So often, people need to know they're ready for that and the kind of work that needs to happen. So the boot camp's a little more curriculum-based than an accelerator is. So by that we mean there'll be more 101s on how to, understand growth marketing, for instance, or what the process is if you want to validate, why you would do this validation process. It is practical, so there'll be times within that boot camp where you'll go out and do that part of the requirement to keep...
We send you out to talk to actual people.
To real people. Yeah. And start building the picture of what that idea or your business scale is going to be. And it does... Our boot camps end in a pitch, not dissimilar to what would happen in the accelerator, which is a bigger pitch and a sort of... we bring investors in the room after that sort of 12-week accelerator. So after a boot camp, you've done that kind of pitching, you've really thought about your business differently, you've gone and done some validation, lots of different curriculum information about legals, information about growth marketing, as I've said, a lot of work around mentor round robins about how to meet different mentors. And in an accelerator we settle with this idea that there's a lead business coach that helps the cohort through, and that you have mentors that we help match, and between you and us we match you with a really good industry mentor that will suit your business and what it is that you need. And then within that 12 weeks there's a whole host of things that we take you through with each stage, all designed primarily to get you to be investor or customer ready, far more customer ready than you may have been before you started, and certainly looking at whether your business model is of interest for you, whether you're interested in investors, and that you might be investor ready in terms of how you need to think about getting your business together and ready.
So we build up to all of that. It's a stepped process, and the business coaching is a really important part of it. So it's an ability to look at your business and ask you some of the hard questions around how do you know that's going to work? Have you asked people? Have you checked? What else might you need to think about? And making sure that we've got the right coaches and the right mentors, and that matching process is a really critical part of the journey.
And I think the startup methodology really supports that. If you kind of do an intensive business immersion around your business idea, then you start to get great focus and a possibility of traction. So that's the aim of the coaching and the mentoring processes, where you are at and pushing you week by week to get further and really develop and evolve that business, which is, an incredibly wonderful opportunity. And it's completely different to doing a formal business course. It's absolutely designed for your idea and your business and where you are, and your founding team, whether you're a solo founder or whether you have a founding team, making that founding team as strong as possible, or making you able to make the right decisions about the right people to come into your business and when they're needed to help you progress those ideas. So it's I often say it's not for the faint-hearted. it's pretty intense.
There are sometimes tears. It does happen,
but it's great.
But it's all good at the end. We just go through that and we come out the other side.
I certainly feel that there's no doubt the impact it can make in terms of shifting a paradigm in the way you think about developing your business ideas, and just getting that level of mentor and coaching support is just not around. And in fact, when we started, and part of the reason for Foundry658 is there's so little available for industry-specific creative industries accelerators. There are accelerators out there everywhere, but they're not necessarily industry specific. And the importance of the library and ACMI coming together is that it just makes our networks pretty formidable. We've both got big networks. We bring that together, and then the aim of that is to support those industries or the businesses by opening as many doors as we possibly can. And, you know, just literally being able to validate saying you're in an accelerator, and particularly an industry-specific accelerator, is important. And often people have stated that outside of an accelerator, they find it really hard to get meetings. And with the imprimatur of an accelerator, it just really helps and assists those businesses getting doors open and, you know, getting an opportunity to have those sort of really meaningful conversations with people that might be the ones that have, you know, control the purse strings and can give you the right feedback around your idea or your business.
Great. So it's not just Helen and I here this evening. We've brought along some fairly formidable as well, creative entrepreneurs who have got two quite different business journeys to share with us to give you a sense of the flavour of what this journey is like and what the business world is like, and maybe some insights into their own draw some insights from their own experiences for you this evening. So our first speaker this evening is Alan Crabb, who is the co-founder of Possible and the founder of Birchall, and he's going to tell you what those are and more about those. So if you could welcome Alan.
Hello, everyone. I have a few slides here, but I think it's only 3 slides. But would I just kick off and tell my story?
Do you want to? Yeah, go for it. You can be here. You can be wherever is most comfortable.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks for inviting me to be part of this site. I think it's great what you're putting together here, and like from knowing the vision of what you're trying to create with Foundry. I think it's awesome for the industry, and it's awesome for the industry that I'm in as well. So, but I'll tell you a bit about this anyway, of how I get started. So, for me, I suppose being a...
Yeah, you're going the right direction. I just spot the person who forgot to pick up the clicker and use the slides. It was me.
So as a quick introduction, as was said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Possible. And more recently, a new platform called Birchall as well. And I'll talk about that as part of my journey as well. So these are the 2 companies. And yeah, let's talk about the journey. So this is my business partner actually on screen here. But I'll get to that stage of my, I suppose, entrepreneurial journey. I think it pretty much, I was born into, I suppose, entrepreneurship. I grew up on a farm. My dad was a farmer all his life. My grandfather was a farmer. It was just is in our blood that we are always, I suppose, doing things and experimenting and creating a business and relying on that business to survive. So, and I think that journey, I think as a kid, I seen my father just try different things, try different lines of business in terms of farming. I was also an engineer as well, so I got, I suppose, early access to what being a businessman or starting a business was all about, and I think that wore off on me, probably more so than any of my siblings. And I also had the interest in tech and IT as well, and my uncle was a computer engineer, and he was always providing latest tech, which none of my friends used to have, which is, I suppose, I look back as probably an advantage to most of my friends and things through school and through uni and things. But I think like even through school, I was always involved in projects. At uni, I then became I studied business IT. I did an entrepreneurship module. I got involved with a few guys. We ended up winning quite a few awards at uni. And we ended up getting quite a bit of funding actually from the university and from the government as well. And interestingly, it was a very unusual kind of business, but it still set the scene, I suppose, for me to be working in the creative industries when I look back We were trying to create a textile that was strong enough and slash-proof for certain applications. And this was just a business idea that we came up with as like a management class. And but we realized that there was a huge demand for this product, and there was so many people working around the world on that same issue. And every time we pitched this idea to competitions and grant bodies, they were like, wow, these guys, so young, they're actually taking on this problem. They're starting to work with some of the best people in the world on trying to solve this problem. And we just kept on getting money. And to be honest, I look back at our business model, and it was just winning prizes and getting grants because we were so good at it. We quickly realized that this problem that we're solving was too big, and that we actually didn't have the expertise in the team ourselves, and we were burning a lot of cash with consultants, a lot of cash. And we ended up, I think, the four of us, we sort of whittled down to just 2 people working on the business full time, and then 1 person full time, and even that was too stressful for that person. So they ended up saying, I can't handle this, I can't do it, and we're not winning any more grants and prizes, so money's running out. So we all ended up working full time for a bit, which I think was a relief in some ways, for especially the last person. I wasn't the last. So I started being a software developer. I did it for a few years, and I think this is one career path that I don't think is recognized as much, probably, in terms of creativity and the creative industries. But like, being a developer you have to be creative in finding solutions and solving problems from a technical sense, and building a platform or building a service that is user-friendly, where people want to use it and have a good experience of that as well. So in some ways, I stayed within the creative industries, or what I think is the creative industries, with web development, and I then became quite good at providing advice to financial systems and things as well. So it was a financial services company that was developer for, and I realized that I liked talking to people as well. So I moved into sort of more a customer-facing role, and that sort of led to me going into corporates for a while. And I worked in I jumped around quite a few companies, I'll admit, in Northern Ireland, in Belfast. I think I moved around quite a few times, and it was getting a bit of a reputation for moving a bit too fast, maybe. So I decided actually to skip the country and move here, actually. And I pretty much worked in a similar environment for a few years, but I was never that happy with it. I even worked in corporate for a while to see if that would settle me. And I realized that it was a huge mistake, and so I started working in PwC for well, I was sponsored by these guys at the start, but within about 10 weeks, I think, I remember complaining to friends. It's like, man, I made the mistake, and I'm stuck here because I'm sponsored and I can't get anywhere else. So, and I remember just a weekend out, I was talking to Rick. You can see on the stage, on the screen. It was definitely with a hangover. I think one Sunday in what do you call the old bookstores? Gee, they're all shut down now. I forget what it's called, but is it Borders? No, it's not Borders. Oh, anyway, it doesn't matter. Was it? I can't remember. Anyway, let's
other independent bookshops are available.
So I used to go in there and read all their magazines for free, but anyway, let's not dwell on that. But we were just talking about it. Let's do something together. Rick's a designer, and I was a developer, and we decided, okay, let's see if we can put together a project, and in some ways keep our skills alive as well, like from a development perspective, and him as a designer. We were just both pretty frustrated in some of the jobs that we were doing, and yeah, we started a platform. Actually, platforms were all the rage back in 2008, 2009. So we decided to create a platform for visual artists, actually, to pretty much promote and sell their artwork online. And it may sound quite crazy at the moment, but some of these platforms that were around at that time were doing pretty well, actually. Like we were all starting kind of marketplaces at that stage, and it was quite good. Like we had hundreds and hundreds of these artists, pretty much profiling their artwork and using us as I suppose as their front face to the world online. And we set it up. Took us probably 9 months, actually. I think I'm quite a slow developer, so it took about 9 months to get it set up. And one side of the marketplace, very quick adopters of this platform, but the other side, not so much. And we really struggled to sell artwork through the platform from a customer perspective. And we didn't have huge budget to spend on the acquisition of customers on the platform, but we set about solving this problem. That's really, like, we looked at, okay, what can we do to help these artists, these hundreds of people that were relying on us to be the front face for them. And it just happened to be that I stumbled upon, I was following a publication at the time, and this concept was used in the creative industries in music, for example, in Europe. I seen it for the first time. A platform called Celeband. And it was allowing artists or musicians to pretty much pre-sell their work or EPs or gigs in return for the funds to do things. And I spotted it once, and then I seen it used by a filmmaker, and they're now our competitor, but they actually started in film, Indiegogo, and that was back in 2008, just when we were doing this here visual art platform. And it just stood out as something as like, maybe we could use something like this for these here artists. We could maybe get together maybe half a dozen of these visual artists to do an exhibition. We put it up and see if it would work. And in the process of looking at doing this, we realized it wasn't possible in Australia for payments. So then we looked at, okay, how do we do this? Solve it for payments. And then we realized, okay, let's build a service. Is it like a one-page service for these visual artists to do this? Is it one-page exhibition? That idea sort of expanded into a bit more, and we're like, okay, maybe this is actually a better idea than actually what we're doing at the moment. So I remember the night, I'll never forget it, we were walking through Chinatown in Sydney, that's where we started. And Rick said to me, he says, Alan, we've spent 9 months in this thing. Are we just going to put this aside and then work on this other thing? And just forget about it? We can't do both at the same time. And I remember the conversation went like, do you know what? This time, we're not going to spend 9 months building it. We're actually just going to try it for once and see if it works. And then if it works, we'll spend more time and effort on it. So we set ourselves a goal of 4 weeks to get pretty much the same service as what you pretty much see today, actually. Only it looks probably a lot worse than what it is now, but we pretty much just worked in 4 weeks, get this thing up, and I wouldn't be developing it. We would get somebody that can move a bit faster, so we engaged a team in China through Rick's connections to build that in that time period. And we also changed the approach as well. We decided to set ourselves up in the first co-working space, actually, in Sydney. They were doing desks for $150 a month, and we even exploited that, yeah. The two of us were working there, yeah. So we pretty much decided, okay, take ourselves out of Rick's place, get ourselves in the co-working space, just work on trying to get one project up, a campaign, specific time period to make this thing happen, and see how it goes. We set up in the co-working space, and we quickly realized that everybody had another project as well. So when we actually launched the new platform, which was actually not called Possible, it was called Funbreak at the time, and we had four campaigns from the co-working space that we were working at, and they all posted their projects. 3 of them successful, 1 didn't quite make it, and that pretty much kicked off for us. I suppose even our first dollar actually for the services that we were providing as well. So you'll always remember, I think, if you haven't already made your first dollar from your art or from your business, you'll never forget that moment. And for me, it wasn't a lot. It was like $20, but for me, it was like, okay, we've actually made some money, and I suppose for us is like the driver of okay, we've been successful with this. I want to do it again and again and again, and then we've done now. I think it's close to 10,000 campaigns actually through Possible. So, sort of very small. It was always a side project at the start, but it seemed to just keep on growing. And obviously there've been lots of pivots along the way. But yeah, I suppose we were pretty fortunate. I think we hit, I suppose, a trend at the time. And looking back, it's pretty obvious what was happening at that time. But I think my thoughts on that, like in hindsight, is simply that we were always experimenting quite a bit. And I look at even as part of my journey, I think the time periods where we've been a bit slack and we've pulled back is the moments that we haven't been looking at like new ways, new opportunities, and always constantly innovating. Always keep, if you can, ahead of the trend, or it can only necessarily has to be a few months before a trend, but at least be part of that and not be behind what you see as a growing trend in whatever industries that you're in. So, and I suppose, a long story short, Virtual, which is a new platform that we launched quite recently, is another, I suppose, pivot on crowdfunding as well. So we quite recently became one of the first licenses in Australia to provide equity crowdfunding for small businesses and startups in Australia to not only allow people to pre-sell or sell items and experiences, but it also allows people to invest into ideas as well. And I feel like through, I suppose, some of the experiences that I've had with Possible is about taking that concept, what we've learned with it, innovating with that model as well. And I think we've done quite a bit with that as well. And looking at, okay, how do we bring this into the industries that we love as well? So I feel like I'm selling. It's part of my journey. I just sell all the time, yeah. This is some of my team. There's a bit of a mix here with both Possible and Virtual. And I think we're missing quite a few people here as well, but it's the only team pick I could find. I wanted to share just quickly, sorry, I know that my 10 minutes is probably up, but I wanted to share a few creative people that have used our platform. And for me, these are three companies or three individuals, because it always starts with an individual or a team that I think are inspirational for me as a platform that provides a service for the creative industries, but also I learn a lot from these guys as well. And I think this is something that I think I've learned over time is like when you see something awesome, like look at it in detail to understand why it's awesome so that you can learn from that experience as well. Like even from team members as well, like Rick has as my business partner, created a lot of appreciation for user experience and design. And that, I think, hopefully shows through the platform and through, hopefully, my new business with the Virtual as well. So just a quick, we've got Peter Drew. Everyone see, well, as many of you guys seen these posters around the city? Yeah? Pop your hand. I want to see many people. Oh, yeah. See, a lot of people.
That was at least 50% of the room.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so Peter is a designer and screen printer, and he's actually been able to create quite a business around this. Like he is a true creative. He does a lot of video. He does a lot of creative works with storytelling, but he uses this as his channel to create, I suppose, creates word of mouth around his art, and he's very public with it. And I think he's just doing things slightly differently from what people tend to do in his industries, where he's providing services, but he's been able to create a product and something that's recognizable as his brand as well. I've got Noman Bow here as well. He's one of the first men's fashion brands that used Possible back in the very early days, I say in about 2012. And the one thing I learned, I think, from this one is the appreciation for giving insight into your art so that other people can better appreciate the time and effort that goes into creating your product or creating a brand. It's one that I think it's worth checking out, especially in the early days, because he was very quick to create the, it's the brand actually, I should say. He's very good at, from a very early stage, creating the brand and the vision of what he's trying to create and provide the insight into what makes that brand. And I think that's sometimes, even in my experience, something that I probably haven't invested enough into in the early stage to get that right and get the messaging right for the brand. So I've had the opportunity with Virtual to do this all again, and I'm hoping that people can see what I've learned from the first time to bring it into the second. But and then thirdly, I've got Park, who recently actually used Virtual, our first success story for Virtual. He actually is the former creative director for Apple, actually. He finished up, I think, 2009. He was behind a lot of the newest products with Apple, including the iPhone. And worked closely with Steve Jobs as part of that process. Phenomenal to have a conversation with in terms of the stories he can tell of that process and the design. But he's one brand in Melbourne. He's based in Elwood. He's one brand that I think you should follow because he does things from a background that he has experienced through some of the biggest companies in the world. So I think check these three out as brands that are doing things locally and doing things really well. So.
And it's great. Thank you for not just sharing your story, but to give us some insight into some of the people that you've learned from and worked with as well.
Yeah. Great. Exactly. I think that's me done. Yeah. That's it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. 10,000 campaigns is very impressive for Possible. That's 10,000 projects that wouldn't have got off the ground without that kind of support. So good on you guys. Grown a lot as well from you and Rick walking down a Chinatown alleyway to the team as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, it's
with a hangover.
There's a bit more of a story as to how we met, but anyway,
we'll leave that one for after the session if you want to hang around and find out what really happened. How did that company really get off the ground? So thank you very much, Alan. And you'll note there that we're talking a lot and we're hearing a lot from people who have been through this journey. The questions that we'll be interested in asking you for the Foundry658 Accelerator, Helen and I will go into a bit more detail about the application process in a little while. It's very much about the team. It's about the people and the skills and what your idea is and what drives you and what your purpose and passion is. And so we're giving you some insights into people who've been through that journey. So you can see a couple of different ways that looks like, but also what are the common threads to these kinds of businesses. So our next speaker for tonight is formerly from Monster Studios and recent alumni of the ACMI Excel Bootcamp and Accelerator program. If you can welcome Mei Lim. You have your own mic, or you can have the lectern if you'd rather, Mei.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Wow. Anyway, good job, Alan. Hi, my name is Mei. I co-founded an experiential design studio called Monster for about 6 years. So my background is actually I was also a software engineer. and then kind of throughout my career went into revenue development and business development for digital marketing platforms. I kind of just fell into it. I would never call myself an entrepreneur or someone who have run a business, who have always wanted to run a business. I just kind of happened to fall into it because I do have a bit of a skill and also a bit of a passion on trying to figure out how to actually create revenue from different platforms. In particular, when I was working for brands at Discovery Channel in the US, that's kind of all I did, and it just drove me. Then when I came back to Australia, I met my partners, Angela and Daniel. Moster is an artist-based design studio. We create immersive installations and activates physical spaces with technology and people. So we've done a lot of amazing projects with National Museum of Australia, with ACMI right now. We've got an actual exhibition on with the Wonderland. So, I have to say it has been a successful 6 years. But if you look under the hood, there's a lot of different challenges that we were faced with as well. So to kind of summarize my journey with Moster, with starting a creative studio, it's a little bit like rock climbing. You're constantly putting a lot of energy into figuring out which way should you go, which step should you take that's going to take you to the next level. And then when you think you got there, you look over and there's actually more to climb over. It has been an amazing, beautiful, challenging. I loved it. I hated it. I was stressed. I was not stressed. I had fun. It was a whole roller coaster of a ride running through it. So, we started quite small. We did projects with, the libraries. And then after that, we got bigger and we did projects with shopping centers like Eastland. We did more commercial work. Then we did more work with bigger museums like ACMI and NMA. And then suddenly we realized we're constantly chasing projects, which we got, but then there was no certainty. There was no, it was a bit like chasing grants as well. I don't know how many artists there are here, but it's a really tough gig at the same time. So we decided that we needed to look at our model. We needed to look into our business and see what was working, what wasn't working, because we were really working our ass off. We loved it, but it was hard work. It was challenging. So we put ourselves through ACMI Accelerator, and because we were at a point of the studio where we knew we had to change, and we found out the accelerator program was on for creative tech industry, which really suited us, and we thought this is a great opportunity to take us through, take our business through the accelerator program and really see what is it that we have to do to kind of get to the next level. So in terms of the journey, I would say that the three things that I kind of wanted to share with everyone to remember as well is the importance of a business model. We had basically, it was a service design business model. We were just like an agency, people came to us and said, hey, we want you to create a project. We responded with an RFP, and that's fine. That can work for some people, but it wasn't something that I personally wanted to do continuously because it was very hard work. And so I think as an artist as well, we always look at the importance of the creative part, but we never really think about how do I actually make money from this? Once I've created that project or that work or that installation, is there another way to make more money from it by running it again, or is it creating it in a different format maybe? So I think I encourage more artists and people within the creative industry to really take a look into their arts practice and explore different ways of making money and creating revenue besides just it being a project-based kind of style. The second thing that I've actually learned from this whole process is scalability. You'll hear people talk a lot about scale, especially within the startup industry, that you really need to scale for it to work. I actually think that even if you can actually scale at 50%, I think that's a really good start, or even at 30%. I don't think, for Monster, we didn't feel that we had to scale at 100%. So kind of exploring that and what scalability means to you and your business and to you as a person, it's something I encourage you to explore as well. And then I guess the final thing that I wanted to share from my journey is that you need to really recognize when you need to change what you're doing. And you need to recognize when you need to actually let it go. I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of people that are within the startup world or who runs their own business. It takes a lot of courage to actually think about and actually face what you have in front of you and kind of say, you know what, this isn't working, we have to change. And what is it that we have to change? And don't look at it, in a year's time, like constantly be looking at it every few months and trying different things, pivot, change. If it doesn't work, try something else. I think we were so busy and we got sucked into all of our work that we didn't stop to look at it from another angle of it as a business and what it means for us to be sustainable. Because I think sustainability for us was really key, but we weren't achieving that. So that's kind of my summary.
Yeah, maybe some hard conversations in there along the way as well.
So that's really what I wanted to share, and I encourage everyone to go for it. And I think going through an accelerator program was invaluable. Like, we were amazed, and we felt very lucky to have access to mentors who would spend their time with us and give us knowledge that you could never get at just being at a university or anything like that. So I think if you're looking at joining an accelerator, you'll never regret it. The boot camp is intense. There were a lot of tears, and but it was really good.
Great, thank you very much, May. We should find out who's here, actually. So in the room amongst us tonight, and hello on the live stream, who here is an artist? Yeah. Who here has already got an up and running creative business? About half, maybe, yeah, about half for each of those answers. Different people, some the same people. Who has got an idea that they're at idea stage? Great. Oh, who's got lots of ideas? Yeah, that's more like it. This is a room full of people with lots of ideas. We can see that. And who works or is already working or is comfortable in working with tech? About half again. Maybe just over half there. And who is not a tech person at all? Yeah, great. That's okay. We're talking about tech, and there's digital involved. We're living in a digital age. This program doesn't have to be for a tech-based business. If one of you would be so kind as to pass me the clicker that I abandoned earlier. Thank you. We thought we'd just put a couple of other examples in the mix before we talk about application process for a couple of other different kinds of business models, because we're talking about business models and pivoting and other kinds of practitioners and businesses that are out there. So we thought we'd throw a couple into the mix. This is Dig Ventures. They're then I don't think we'd describe them as competitors for you, Alan, but they did set up their own crowdfunding platform. So Dig Ventures are a business that allows you to go along on archaeology digs. It's all about, the founder is entirely driven by how do we open up that archaeological process, how do we take that passion and that interest and that deep understanding of a subject matter. Surely other people are interested too. How do we make that more available and accessible, and therefore how do, the more accessible, the more visible, the more funding, the more support, the more secure that industry becomes. So Dig Ventures set up their own crowdfunding platform and use that as leverage to get investment and to run these things called dirty weekends, which you got to go away and dig. They also got to meet Tony Robinson, which I'm really jealous, and that is their clear success. There's also the option to build up, and this happens a lot, particularly in some of the craft industries, to work in building your personal brand. So platforms that are out there like Pinterest can give you the profile and the platform where people become aware of you. You can see lots of types of creators who are out there have then used this, like Tilly and the Buttons, to create their own brand. So it's not just Tilly, it's Tilly and her Buttons. She has books, but she's also used that online presence that has been such a strong following to get onto a TV program, and then use that as an opportunity to start doing in-person workshops, all sold as Tilly teaching you. So come and learn directly from Tilly and the Buttons. So she may have started in that online world, but it's in the offline world as well, where her business has taken her. Then for some of the agencies out there, there's ways to think about hospitality models. Basically, let the bar fund your art. Are there ways for you to hold the events and have income and revenue streams come from the events and activities or the commercial space that you have that lets you then go off and do more interesting things with the revenue from those programs? You can sell things. We Built This City is in London, and Ali at We Built This City got bored of seeing all the red London buses. There's only one way to look at London, telephone boxes, that very traditional tourism perspective on London, and use that as an opportunity to say, there is an artist's take on London. There is a real city. There is a more creative, vibrant, interesting world out there, and the tourists want to know that. They want to be a part of that authenticity as well. So she set up a store. It's on Carnaby Street in the heart of London, and has proved very successful. It's still there as a different way to buy products from local artists that represent what they think of as local and London. And it's not We Built London, it's We Built This City, so it could go anywhere. So when we're talking about scale, this is scaled to the size of a shop, but it has the potential that it could go elsewhere. At the very big end of the scale, Live Theatre in Newcastle in the UK did a very brave, amazing thing where they knew that there were huge cuts in the arts in the north of England. So instead of saying it's getting cut, and living on lower and lower, they went to local government with a pitch where they wanted £6 million of investment, and they were going to use that to become landlords, effectively, for other social enterprises and businesses, so that they could then support other businesses. They got a rent increase from that, and it helped to support their own work. So there's now a small business incubator and workspace on that site as well. And for the government, this was many years ago now, it's been a really successful model, a very brave model for a theatre to go down, but it's been really successful in supporting and regenerating that part of the town in a post-industrial town, and therefore it's been seen as a great success by the local government, even though scary proposition early on, but they approached it as a business case to government rather than a grant model. And then at the other end of the scale, at the artist end, Honor Eastley runs the Starving Artist podcast. Anyone a listener? Yeah, two, a few, great, yep. So Honor has a really successful profile in iTunes with 10,000 downloads in the first week is really impressive. And there's a whole bunch of multiple sources of funding that support the Starving Artist. She's got a really successful Patreon. Anyone else use Patreon? one person uses Patreon in the room. So Patreon is one of the mix, but there's sponsorships, there's public funding. She does deals with broadcasters as well, and has recently done an ABC partnership. So looking at lots of different smaller streams of funding to fund the overall intent behind that arts business. So it's just a bit of a whistle stop around some of the options that are out there. When we say creative business and business models, we're thinking very broadly, and we expect that you guys have got a huge range of ideas, and that's what we're interested and excited in.
And I think it says too that the disruption that's happened over the last few years to a whole lot of business models as we understand them is really exciting and interesting, and it's the environment's ripe to think about what kind of models would work for you as practitioners or businesses or product ideas.
So we'll take questions in just a few moments, so start thinking about what questions you have in your mind. I know you have them, so be brave and ask them. But before we do that, you're probably going to ask us about the nitty-gritty of the applying process, so we thought we'd run through that a little bit. So, Helen, who are we looking for?
We're looking for anyone in the creative industries, so very broadly. They can be founders in teams or solo founders. With product ideas, businesses that are interested in scaling and ready to kind of do the work that comes with boot camp and an accelerator. Committed to really kind of shifting and changing and thinking about scaling business. So that commitment is really important.
So there are two categories that the kind of question prompts that the application form will have. And those two categories are quite simple. We're interested in who you are, and we're interested in what your idea is. And we are putting an emphasis on the who you are. We're looking for great ideas, for sure, but we're looking for people that have the drive to really see them through and that are ready, that this is the right business program for them, because it won't be for everyone. So we will be asking questions around what is your purpose? Why have you come to this? Why do you want to spend 3 months crying? Sorry, it's really fun, really. But
she didn't cry that much. She's exaggerating.
Why do you want to spend not just 3 months, but several years living and breathing and sleeping and getting this program, this project off the ground? You'll be dreaming about it. So that's why we're interested in who you are. And we're also interested in the idea and how different it is. So does this idea already exist? And it can already exist, but you have to tell us why yours is better. If the idea doesn't exist, or maybe it exists in another industry, so maybe this is a successful business model in sports, how would you apply that kind of thinking or that kind of business model to the creative industries? So show us how your idea is different from what's already out there, what makes it unique, what makes it innovative, and what drives you. They're really the things we're looking for. Nitty-gritty wise, we'll be opening applications on Friday, and you'll have a whole month. So you've got till the 30th of September to apply for Bootcamp 1, which takes place in November. And then you'll have until the 14th of November to apply for Bootcamp 2, which takes place in February. So you've got a bit of time to think about it. And we'll be asking for very short elevator pitches about who you are and what your idea is, just 100 words each. And then we'll be giving you a couple of options. So if you want to send us 10 slides, if you want to send us a couple of pages with your prototype or your idea, or if you want to send us a 5-minute video, if you'd prefer not to do the written thing, then there are all different ways that you can submit your idea. And we've put a couple of prompt questions up on the application page from Friday, just to give you some ideas of the things to think about and the things that we'll be thinking about when we assess all of the different pitches.
I guess also it's important to note, if you've got a prototype, so you've actually physically created a product, the bootcamp will still make you go back into doing some validation to make sure that it's market fit. So you need to be prepared to do that, because if you haven't done that process, you may shift and change that product prototyping. So it's important to do, and it refines the way you talk about that product, and it refines the way you think about the markets you need to reach as well. So it's a positive process.
All right, so hopefully at this point you have formulated your questions, and we've got a couple of roving mics on either side, I think. So if you want to, hand up right away down here. So we'll start over here, and just before you ask your question, if you can get the next person queued up, that would be
It's
great.
just a really quick technical question. You said Bootcamp 1 and Bootcamp 2, so is it the same program twice and
Yes.
you do one of them?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
So
we're just repeating it.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to take, we're trying to take as many people as we can through the bootcamp process. So we say that we reckon we can take 50. We can only realistically do that as a 25-person cohort, because it's important that you get to know one another and share with one another. So we'll take 25 as a group through in November, and then we'll repeat exactly the same program for the next 25.
And there's a later deadline for applying for Bootcamp 2.
Yes.
Yeah, and so then out of that, you'll pick the best 10 to do the accelerator.
The 10 that are ready to go through that process, yeah.
Okay, so just while I've got the mic, so are you taking individuals from different teams, or will you take the whole team?
It's the whole team, so it's the project and the team that is the most ready together as a unit to go through it.
But sorry, the bootcamp itself? Say you've got 3 co-founders in one team. Do they all do the bootcamp, or just one of them on behalf of the team?
There are parts of the bootcamp you must do as founders together, because you're not on the same page if you don't. So it's really, it's important for the teams. But there will be times, as long as there's one representative absolutely doing the whole bootcamp, there'll be times where you all need to be there. But, you know, we recognise that there'll be spread of time, and we're trying to be flexible.
Yeah, we're going to try and be as flexible as possible while still making sure that we give you the elements of the program that we know work best. And if you can imagine, we've had a few people from collectives talk to us. One of the founders goes through the process and thinks, amazing, we need to go over here, and the other 2 weren't there, and they're still pulling in that direction. That's why there are some sessions it's really critical that you're all on the same page for.
It's worth noting that the boot camp, if you do the boot camp alone, you'll still get enormous amounts of benefits from that alone in terms of thinking and methodology and the way to move forward. So they're both really useful processes.
Just one quick question, which is, what was the name of the methodology? And the other question is, there's been talk about scaling. Could you just tell me what that is?
Yes. So the methodology's called Lean, and what it is it's simple. It's just lean small teams that are trying to get their business to market, so they're doing it in a way where they can really understand what their product is and where it fits in market. They don't make anything until they've done the testing of the market first, so that they can, you know, and they do experiments with the market all the time to get more and more evidence to help them support the business ideas that they're making. So it's a lean methodology. It kind of started in Silicon Valley, but, you know, it's a sensible approach. But certainly in a creative industries, we take that a little more broadly. And the idea of scaling is just that you can take that idea and replicate it. So the more it can scale, the better it is. Often platforms are renowned for scaling, so certainly the ideas that were discussed today with Possible is a scale. It can bring lots of people. So you make it once and it continues. Then it grows, yeah.
So what kind of, in fact, Ellen, what kind of time period, you know, you 10,000 successful campaigns now, but you started with just trying to get the 3 people in the same co-working space as you on the platform. What happened? What was the time frame between that?
Maybe even more relevant is now, because I'm going through this process again with Virtualized. I'm in startup mode again. So I'm trying to find a supposedly called market fit. I'm trying to make it successful. That's pretty much how it really means for a business is, okay, how do you make it successful for your clients, or how do you make it successful for you as a business, you know? And then how do we find a way to replicate that again and again without having to grow your team to 500 people, you know, or in an efficient way. So I think from my perspective, like, market fit is just making sure it works and people like it and people are talking about it. Like, that's generally the way that I foresee market fit. Also, I suppose, comes into that in terms of scaling is knowing how to acquire customers, knowing the cost of acquisition, all of these things. I don't want to dwell too much. I don't want to be the first lesson for the.
Save that for the boot camp.
Yeah, I think this is for the boot camp. Yeah, but yeah, I think there's in the creative industries it can sometimes be quite difficult because it relies on the creative art that you're creating as well, and you can't, like, it's individualistic in some capacity, but there's very few times that I haven't seen a way to scale something, if that makes sense, and it's suppose it's understanding how you can duplicate the same thing or find a market that you can actually scale into. So like even every service-based businesses can look at ways that they can scale the same service over and over again. So
great, thank you. Does that work for you? Good. And I think someone else has got the mic out there already.
Hello, thank you for that. My question is in regards to the word creative industries, and the arts, I guess, is what we instantly think of being creative, but what is the boundary, if any, around what does the creative industry mean?
We purposefully haven't made a list because we don't want to miss someone. Because if we make that list, we will inevitably, there'll be one industry that we'll have missed. But we still need to give some sort of definition. So we follow Creative Victoria's definition of that, which is on their website, which is very broad, everything from design and fashion through to physical arts, theatre arts, architecture, publishing, digital publishing. It's a huge range of creative output. So we're looking for those people who are the creatives, who are working in making that kind of work, but also those who have businesses that support the creative industries. So Possible, for example, being a platform that supports and champions other creative endeavours to happen.
I've heard one time someone said, it's everything except finance.
Poor finance people, but yeah. But if you're looking for a definition, we go by Creative Victoria's definition on their website. We've got another question up the back.
Well, I have two questions. One is that is this program open for businesses that reach the scale stage, or do we have to start from scratch? The second question is, do you recognize helping schools for creativity as a creativity sector?
So education?
Education.
It depends what kind of education you're offering.
Well,
really.
what we're doing is we're helping the secondary school students to be more creative.
Again, I don't see why not from what you're saying, if you're that kind of platform that is going to support and amplify the work of the creative industries.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But happy to have a more detailed chat about it with you after, because we need to learn a little bit more.
And to your first question, yes, we're interested in businesses that are ready to scale, and certainly that's what the accelerator is about. But the boot camp isn't necessarily, I mean, there'll be 101 moments in there, but it's also about just checking in that people are ready to scale and that they're coachable and that they work with cohort and, teach each other. And it's really about building those skills, because one of the things that works in this methodology is really the peer learning process, that they really do. The businesses support each other, and that's as much as part as anything else, really. So we would expect and hope people are happy to go through the boot camp, because even if they're a business that scales, that you can learn from that process.
My turn?
Go ahead, microphone holder.
All right. I'm a little bit tired, so my question might go 10 different directions. But I was wondering, kind of similar to the previous question about which industries are involved, I wanted to ask at what kind of if we're entering into this not quite knowing exactly what we want to do, but we know what area we're interested in, is this program helpful for that, or is it very much you're going in to create a product or a group, a studio, a system, rather than you are coming in as an individual wanting to do work in an area?
I think the short answer is that if you've got an idea that's not fully fleshed out, boot camps and accelerators are fantastic. So sometimes you're in a better position than if you've got a prototype and you think you've nailed it, if you haven't done all that market validation, because sometimes it's hard to step back from what you think you've got versus somebody who's actually looking at the idea of problems and problem solving. So that's another thing that's very important about the methodology, is that part of what makes a customer fit or a market fit is that you do solve some problems. And in some ways, for artistic companies, that feels a little strange, or artistic products, because you build beautiful, amazing, wondrous things that people don't know that they need, and then they experience it and then they know it's amazing. So there is that journey, but it still doesn't mean that that solution fit isn't interesting and worthwhile working on. So in answer to your question, if you've got that journey that you're after and you can be clear about what that is, then that's of interest. And you know, as Anna said before, it's often the who it is more than the idea, because someone will pivot their idea and change their idea considerably during the process. So it's sort of a combination of who are you and what you've been doing and can you execute. And that would be true even in the startup world for investors. Investors are often backing the team rather than the idea, because you know, it's a bit of both, but those ideas will change. It's really, can the team execute, that is of most interest.
And we've been using the word pivot a lot. All four of us have used it. It just means change direction slightly when you get new information. So you have to be willing to give up a little bit of the control. If the customers, if people are telling you that they want something slightly different, you've got to be willing to go with that.
And if any of you have been working in design, iterating, thinking, you'll know what pivoting is, or you're a creative practitioner and creative process
do it all
is
the
about
time.
Constantly changing and pivoting. So.
And probably more up for it than many of the finance and engineering type people. So there's at least 4 or 5 more questions in the room that I can see. So I've spotted you all. So we've got the gentleman with the mic up the back, and then when you're finished, if you could pass to the woman in the mustard cardigan, that'd be great.
Hey, I just had a clarification. So is an entry into the boot camp a prerequisite for the accelerator, or is that, I guess that's the question.
We use that as the proving ground to look for which teams are ready to go through the accelerator process. There will be, if there are extenuating circumstances, and there are teams out there who never heard about the boot camps and come to us late, we'll actually be there'll be an application process for the accelerator, but we expect that the vast majority of the teams, if not all of them, will have come through the boot camp because they need to be ready and at the right stage to go through that accelerator process. So we expect that that's where the majority of the teams will come from. Okay, and then we had a lady down the front.
Hi, I've got 3 questions. The first one is from the previous applications you got into the boot camp, how many people apply versus how many you choose? You choose 50, but how many people applied for that?
As many people as we'll take, and we've had 420 registrations of interest at this stage, with people who are looking at putting applications in. So if they all go forward for Bootcamp 1, we'll take 25. And then if you're unsuccessful, you have the opportunity to go forward to try again for Bootcamp 2.
You could also choose to just do the boot camp. That will be part of the EOI process. You could say, I'm already self-selecting. I'm not going through to the accelerator, but I'm interested and I'd like to do the boot camp. So that's absolutely an option as well.
Okay. Is this the right thing to apply for if you need a group of people around you to help make this idea happen, but you haven't met them yet? So I'm just a solo person with an idea, and my idea requires a whole other, 2 other facets, at least. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. And in fact, there's quite a lot of information about how to do that in the best way, what type of teams work, what makes up a good team dynamic. It helps you start making those decisions.
And then just on your point about we look at you as a person, the who, if your idea doesn't necessarily, not that there's not a crossover, there is a crossover, but if it's not a clear crossover from what your career is and what your background is that something to consider? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah. So if you're coming, for example, from an accountancy world or a software engineering background, that you've just got to spell out why. Why are you changing? Why is this so important to you that you want to live, sleep, breathe this project and this work?
And the boot camp is, again, the testing grounds, a good metaphor for it. If you come into the boot camp, you get that opportunity to show us that you're ready and what you're doing and how coachable you are. Like, you know, one of the things that is really important is, are you coachable? Can you take information?
Such a polite phrase.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's mentors and coaches. So are you taking on their feedback? Can you, you know, move that idea because you have taken on that information?
Great. Thank you.
Can I have a question for the crowd as well while we're waiting for the next one? Who in the room is an individual that's looking for a co-founder?
About 20% of the room, I reckon. Yeah. Who's looking for a co-founder? You need a teammate. Yeah. You don't have all the right skills. You want someone to partner with. Yeah.
No, I'm just interested. Yeah. No, it's something it's pretty important. Like, I think it's something that most individuals should consider, actually, because it's very hard to find someone that has all the skill sets to create a business, and a scalable business at that. In that respect, so I think it's tough. It's tough having a co-founder, but to be honest, like it's harder to live without one. In general, in my
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I couldn't have done a lot of what I've done without my partners. They're like my family, like, you know. And the business was our child. It's like a family unit.
And just to support the sole founders, there's also models that can bring people in. You just need to know when you need to bring them in to collaborate with you. So it's, you know, not to deter the sole founders. I agree, it's easier when there are more than one, but, you know, it's not impossible.
Question at the back,
yeah. I've just got something really, some just really practical ones. How long is the boot camp, and what's the time commitment? And similarly with Accelerator, and on that note too, what would the notification lead time be in terms of us being able to make sure we were available with life and stuff to make it happen?
So the boot camp was about 10 days worth of really active work that at least one of the founders needs to be there across those 10 days. The first 2 days, all the teams need to be there, and they're 2 full-time days.
And by there we mean here in Melbourne.
And in that program. And then the last day as well. So there's sort of 3 days you'd need all your team to be part of the process, and then one across all of those days, across the 3 weeks. We are scheduling it over 3 weeks, and some will be weekends, just to make it a bit flexible for people, because we understand, you know, we all have busy lives. So we're going to try and do a model that gives a bit of room for that. And similarly, in the Accelerator, part of the grant, it's not a grant, it's a seed fund, if you like, using the parlance, is to help you take those 12 weeks to really develop the business idea. So that's really important to do, because you're going to get a lot of momentum and a lot of feedback, and in order for you to scale, you need to be able to put that time and energy into it, and that's what that money is available to help you do.
And in terms of the lead time question, so for the first boot camp, we'll let you know it's a pretty quick turnaround. If you're successful to get into boot camp 1, I think it's a 3-week turnaround, before 3 to 4 week turnaround before the program begins. If you're in boot camp 2, we let you know before Christmas, and the boot camp's in February.
Accelerator does start in March, so what we would expect people to do, because we're obviously not going to be able to make a decision about who gets into the Accelerator until the finish of the second boot camp, that you just keep those dates, and we'll try and move that fairly quickly to let people know. So it's going to be, that will give you probably only about 2 weeks, maybe at best 3 weeks notice, but probably 2.
And the Accelerator is 3 months full-time, starting from part-time, starting from March. Okay.
But we expect that if you're working on your business,
I was going to say
it's
part-time
working. Yeah,
part-time in time in the accelerator, so coaching. You get to be part. We give you a desk down at ACMI X during the accelerator time, so you've got a place and an office space to be down there, and meeting rooms, and that's part of what you get as well. So if you're not in direct coaching or mentoring, or it's not curriculum or it's part of the program, we would be expecting you are working on your business in order to get that traction.
Can I say something about the, because we were running our design studio at the same time as doing the accelerator, and that was pretty difficult. If I was to do it again, I would say that we would be 100% committed to it. Being pulled in multiple different directions meant that it really slowed us down compared to some of the other teams that were 100% just in the accelerator.
Mm-hmm. And what I have to say about that accelerator, sadly, we didn't realise it was really important to have some funding for the teams. I think that was our learning curve, and we certainly took that into the conversations with Foundry to make sure that there is some money available to support people to go through that properly.
So the cash seed funding is for the accelerator. It's $20,000 per team, per project. So it's a total pool of $200,000 for the 10 projects. There is no funding attached to the bootcamp process. If that is really significant and puts you off applying, even putting in an application, come talk to us, because we don't want for those circumstances to be so extenuating, and to have a great idea that could be fantastic and just needed a little bit more help. So we don't have any funding for the bootcamp, it's for the accelerator, but we will do what we can to try and support people if they're selected for the bootcamp process. We'll just get the mic down to you so that people... We'll just get the mic down to you, she says, doing it as well, so that people on the live stream, because we have several people watching, can also hear.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting to hear about the Foundry. My question that's related, I'll cut to the chase. I live in Geelong. I have a 5, a 3 and a 2-year-old. I've convinced myself that my great idea for my creative pursuit is that the Foundry's come at a really great time in my career. And so I'm just wondering about, balancing family life, maybe even like some sort of video connection for boot camps, for example, might help. So for you're talking about, funding that might prevent someone from applying. The reality is that, maybe, family commitment might prevent me, sort of thing. So I was just wondering, what are some scenarios for,
We're certainly Zoom and video hook up for coaching. We did that with a couple of teams. We had one team who was Victorian and Adelaide, and so we did all the coaching in the accelerator using that model. We'll also look at some of, some weekend time and a few things to be as flexible as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, even still there's obviously a time commitment, but that's great. Thank you.
Eligibility is a good point there that someone's just brought up. What we haven't mentioned is that our supporter is Creative Victoria, and so at least one member of your team needs to be permanently based in Victoria. And you've got to be over 18. At least one member of your team has to be permanently based in Victoria. Beyond that, and you've got to have your team in the room for a couple of the days.
So suppose you get in the boot camp with whatever idea that got you in the boot camp in the first place. Then you meet people in the boot camp and you said, you know what, let's get together and do something different. Is there scope for that in the boot camp to do that?
You've described a classic pivot, looking for different skills, finding new people.
This is Tiara, our first success on Possible as well.
Yeah.
That's absolutely the process.
We expect change. If you all come out of the boot camp, even, let alone the accelerator, with exactly the same program, we'll be very surprised. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you need to be committed to that idea you pitched at the meeting. Like, no, stick to it. You promised.
Not at all.
Got a hand up here with the mic, yep, and then one down the front.
Just a quick question. The accelerator program only runs once for next year.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yep. Cool.
It's 10 teams from end of March to June, all hanging out together for 12 weeks. Yeah.
Do you know if there's intentions to continue running it continuously for following years?
We have worked on the basis that this will be a 2-year pilot program.
Sure.
We do have funding from government, and there is an election in November.
Sure. Okay.
So at the moment, we can commit for certain to 1 year, but we're working on the basis that this is a 2-year pilot.
Yep. Thank you.
I'm curious, not that it really is vital at this point, but I'm curious about the seed funding. Is that handed to the those who are in the accelerator program, or is it marked for particular types of investment in the new business? How does that work?
So it is given over to the teams to manage. There is an expectation, obviously, that they're committing the time, and that helps them. For some, that will be, some travel or what is required, childcare or something like that will be needed. And also, it is that sort of seed that helps you. You might want to buy a Facebook ad or do something towards that business. That little bit of cash is important. So, that is determined with the teams as we go forward. But this is also an equity-free accelerator, and what we mean by that is many incubators and accelerators that operate will give people cash, but they will expect some equity in the businesses for it. So this is equity-free.
Which is quite an unusual model for us to have. And if we can just pass the microphone behind you as well first. We'll have this hand up first, yeah.
Hi, I was wondering, with all of the talk around pivoting and not being too committed to being open to your idea changing, with the prototype that we submit with the application, is it okay if it's sort of far away from a finished product?
Yep.
Great.
We're happy.
Yep,
Can I
totally.
say we're very happy that it is?
Yeah,
because
a bit buggy, maybe missing some of the graphics.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Because that's what we'll work through as part of the process. So we expect we'll get a whole range of businesses, from idea to prototype to currently existing commercial businesses that are getting revenue in the creative industries that are ready to really grow. So we expect a whole range, and we are working through to tailor the program so that we can support those different stages. Great. So I'll have this gentleman was just before you, and then.
A quick question about pathways post the accelerator. What have some of the pathways been for previous businesses?
So they range. We've got one of the last cohort on demo night got some investment. So
demo night is the big pitch at the end.
So that came directly out of that process. Really, when you get to demo night, you're just launching the business. The work comes after that, really, to continue. And others have, there's a company that we're part of, they're just starting to get their business customers and building that. So they're all kind of moving on and doing different things. May's actually really pivoting.
Yeah, it's part of going through the accelerator program is to help us kind of make big decisions for the studio. So one of the biggest decision I've made is to exit and leave the studio, but I'm continuing on to my next big project with my brother. So we are starting another business. So it's been great.
So that's a
Different
pathway
pathways.
too. Yeah. And not unusual, the reports show that it's often your third or fourth idea that is the one that takes. So that's why we're interested in the people.
This is just a follow-up, really, to the seed funding question. In terms of, do we then have to provide? Do you then have to provide an acquittal of the monies that you've
We'll work all that through with you. Yeah, we'll make it as painless as possible. We don't need your receipts. Let's put it that way. But we do need to.
You don't need to
have
match
a
it
sense.
either.
No.
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 They're giving you money.
We're giving 20,000. And we're giving it in as broad a way we can to help you get that business idea happening.
But the focus is on getting your business idea happening. That's why the money's coming towards. But if that does mean childcare to be able to go through and get your business rolling, then that's, so those conversations are important to have with us.
I think we've got time for one more question. If anyone, there's one just up there.
Hey, my question is, if you have multiple ideas, can you submit multiple ideas in your application?
You can. We'd suggest you pick one. Okay. Focus a little bit. Let's see the one that you really... We're looking for what you're really driven by. Let's see the idea that's really driving you at the moment. Oh, there's what we got. Sneak one more question in there. Anyone else got a burning question? I can... You haven't had a question. Yeah. One down the front. Yeah. So let's have this one down the front. It's all right. If you can put your hands up.
Why all the tears?
It's like an emotional journey, It's like it's really intense. I think it forces you to think very differently and make very big decisions. I think for us as well, we had an existing business. So for us, every decision we made while going through the accelerator program, it's real. It's very, very real for us. So we were faced with a lot of challenges. There wasn't actually a lot of tears.
We're being a little jocular.
They drank quite a bit of wine.
Yeah, but it is an intense program because you put yourself in situations where you're not comfortable with. Sometimes you challenge it, the methodology, especially for us coming from an arts kind of background. It was very new and very different. So it's an emotional journey. I think, for us, it's not just going through a program and then, we get spat out. This is like we're making real life decisions about my life, my partner's lives, and running the actual studio as a business. And it's, we either make it or break it, and, so, it's emotional, but awesome. Like, even just for the boot camp, the boot camp was amazing because it was so intense. You had such short period, like you just have to go, which I loved. And then with the accelerator program, we really got to deep dive into it. So even if you don't plan to go to accelerator, I agree with Helen. Just giving you the boot camp will give you a good glimpse of what the potential is.
I've had friends go through accelerators. I haven't went through myself, but the mates that have done it, it's amazing how fast they've grown. Like 6 months doing it yourself, these guys are doing it in probably a quarter of the time. They're learning and experiencing the emotional highs and lows and things, particularly when it comes to preparing pitch for investment, all these kind of things as well. So I think it just seems heightened. Like everything's more extreme for me. It seems.
I suppose that's why it's called boot camp, right?
Yeah. Or accelerator too. It is about accelerating. But it's a lot of support. There's great business minds and great mentors and great, individuals and industry advisors in there that are helping every business along the way. So,
And at that point, I think from that insight from each of those, thank you for so many questions. That was really great to have that many. I'm not disappearing. Helen and I will still be here. So if you didn't have a chance to ask your question or you didn't want to ask in front of a large room, come up to us afterwards. That's fine. We look forward to your questions. You have until the 30th of September to think about this and put your application in if you want to go for Bootcamp 1. For Bootcamp 2, you've got until the middle of November. So that's the timeframes that we're working to. Is anyone in the room still thinking of putting forward an application? Good, we only scared 1 or 2 of you off. That's great. So good luck, everyone. We're really interested and want to hear more about your ideas. And come talk to us afterwards, or we'll see you in cyberspace. Please join me, though, in thanking May, Alan, and Helen.
Go for it. Yeah.
Good luck.